Hi, I'm Samantha Anderson, Director of Communications for Newton Public Schools, and I'm here with Superintendent Van Rankin to go over last night's Board of Education meeting, as well as just any questions you may have about the district. Just a reminder, tonight at 6, you get to see me again for the Newton High School enrollment Q&A. So that's at 6 o'clock with Principal Smith, and that would be good for any incoming students at the high school or anybody that's going to be at there next year. So, but let's focus on this for now. We had a board meeting last night. That's why we're here. There were some changes possibly to athletics as far as spectators go. Can you let us know what those were?
Yeah, the Kansas State High School Activities Association approved allowing up to 4 spectators at events beginning, I believe it's the 29th of this month, all right? The recommendation from our AD and from the athletics department and the buildings is to allow 4 spectators per senior student, and not just parents. Before it was like parent or guardian, but they're talking 4 spectators for senior student, and then all other below that up to 2 spectators. And so that's what we're going to do. That'll allow us to keep our gyms at about that 25% capacity, so we don't have to worry about social distancing as much. The league hasn't officially met to talk about their recommendations. I think maybe from what I understood, that they were, the general sentiment of the league was maybe just stick with the 2. But if we can accommodate the 4 senior parents only, we want to be able to do that. We know it's a hardship. Switching to the spectators does allow you a little flexibility too. You could have your grandparents coming, or even siblings, whereas before it was only parents. So that'll allow a little more flexibility. And as this kind of evolves, we may make some changes. There'll obviously be instances where the venues don't allow that capacity or that size, like for example, out of maybe a wrestling match or something like that. But we think at basketball games, we should be able to accommodate that. So.
Hey, and just a reminder, if you do have any questions about any of this or anything district related that we can answer, just leave them in the comments section. We are live streaming this on, I think, all of our pages. So if you see me clicking around, I'm just trying to make sure there's no questions on any of our other pages. The board also talked about a few additional days off in February. Will you let us know what those are so parents can plan?
One of them is February the 12th. Through our negotiations process this year, initially we were removing some parent engagement time. We added some of that back. We finished up negotiations towards the end of November. And when things were all ratified and things were all said and done, we needed to remove a student attendance day to get those hours put into the calendar. We selected February 12th for that purpose. And buildings are reaching out to parents and families individually about when their conferences are going to be held. So that day was designated as the compensation day, sort of. They could hold conferences on that day if they wanted to, although I think all of the buildings, if not all of them, chose to do evenings in advance of that date. So you probably would have received some information about that from your buildings. If you have not, you will shortly in that regard. February the 23rd is another day that our Kansas State Board of Education is allowing some flexibility for up to 20 additional hours of professional development to be utilized. We may not take those 20 hours. So what we asked the board for was approval to use that date, February the 23rd, which is a Tuesday, as a professional development day. It coincides with the statewide ACT date, which makes things logistically better for our high school for sure. They're going to have a lot of students on the campus that are taking the statewide sponsored ACT, which are our students. But that would have taken I can't remember what Mr. Dietz, who organizes that at the high school, it's 9 or 10 staff or something like that that he has to have help administer that, and they have to have the facilities in order to do so. The original request was to at least go remote at the high school, but we also have some other needs that we have to attend to across the district from a professional development perspective, a training perspective. There's some literacy requirements that require all of our elementary staff and any English language arts staff member, K through 12, to receive about 5 hours of a specific literacy training, which related to the dyslexia task force legislation that was passed, and then the regulations put in by the Kansas State Department of Education. So that's going to allow us to be able to do that without teachers having to do that outside of the duty day or just in specific staff meetings. So it's going to allow them that time for that specific training. So we're thankful the board allowed that. We've got one more hurdle before it becomes officially official. But right now we wanted to get it on that calendar to get that warning out to you. If that does change, which I don't anticipate that happening, we would let you know. But mark on your calendar for the 23rd of February for another student non-contact day.
Okay, we did have a question come in. I believe the high school should be sending out some information on this, I think today, but she had a question about prom and what the plans are, as well as graduation, some questions about it being outside or inside. Could you and just let us know what the update is?
Yeah, the proposal last night to the board for prom, a group, Mr. Smith, high school principal Smith, Caleb Smith, there's two Smiths up there, so we always got to make that distinction. Two principal Smiths up there. They, in meeting with a group of students, for the prom portion, students and other advisory groups, they're suggesting an outside prom on May the 1st. They've got some hurdles they've got to jump through. They would like to have that on Fisher Field outside. It's a kind of more of a secure location with the fencing and stuff like that, so they can monitor. They're looking at doing some cool kind of things with the community with that. So if that works out and things are looking good from a case perspective, a COVID perspective, and also, if it's allowed to take place on Fisher Field. If not, we may look at another venue. He and I have talked about some other options outdoors. We really don't want to have an indoors prom if at all possible, because the venues that we have available to us here in the community, really, we wouldn't feel comfortable with that, all right? Looking at graduation, I think it's the 22nd of May, if I remember correctly. I don't have that date memorized. We're going to do that down at Hartman Arena. Once again, Mr. Smith got with some groups of students, some parent advisors as well, from what I understand, and posed that question earlier on in the year and continue to work through that. That allows for around 4,000 or so tickets, if I remember correctly, so that we can socially distance and really not have to be worried or concerned about weather concerns. So that can be a real hard, fast date that we put out there. We want to make sure that we have that in place. I know that they'll be contacting you more with more specific details from the high school office. So we're excited to be able to kind of get those on the calendar. I really hope both of those work out well. I think the graduation will work out well. Prom will be interesting, but it's an important activity if we can have it.
We did see some questions with just the gating criteria. I know the board had a couple questions. When will they review that again? When could we expect either to know there will be a change or know that this is how we're going to stay for a while?
At the February 8th board meeting is when we'll pick this up again. And when you look at our numbers across the county and really across the state, they're much better than they have been in the past. And so, right now, I think things are working out pretty well. So that's when we will revisit that if we want to make any changes. We kind of want to get away from just the color designations with a lot of the research that's coming out, a lot of the practices that are in place from a mitigation perspective. Our contact tracing, our health department, or our health staff here locally working with our health department has done an excellent job of contact tracing, and with our isolation and quarantines, we're trying to keep kids on campus as much as possible. this hybrid method of learning in those grades that we have that operating, I think is working out pretty well. I don't see us going to a more restrictive mode unless, of course, like we have talked about in the past, we have issues with staffing or issues with internal transmission that's taking place. So we're going to be in this mode up until the 12th. On the 8th is when any adjustments would be made. But I feel fairly good about how things are going right now. But I never want to say that too confidently either.
And I'm going to give one last call for questions. And then while we wait, will you let us know so the Lindley Hall plaque project is moving forward. They've gotten their committee together. They're going to have their first meeting in early February. However, they did talk last night, Board Member Edwards and Board Member Ortiz, about just wanting the community's input. So who should they contact? What should the community do if they do want to share either their input or maybe historical documents, things that might be good for the plaque?
I think the best thing to do, since those two individuals are the two running that committee, I'm not trying to throw Luke and Andy under the bus, but if I remember correctly, they specifically said, especially Luke, if you have something you want to share, please reach out to him. And I know Sam, through our district level communication, they have the process to send some emails to those board members. So if you do want to do that, that's the method that I would probably take if I were you.
And that actually reminds me of one question we get a lot. A lot of times people ask for the board members' emails, and actually the best way to get a hold of them is if you go to our website, there's a board page, and in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a contact form. And I know that that's the way to get a hold of them. I know it's a little different than a regular email, but that goes right to the emails they check the most, because some of them have multiple emails because one's apparently not enough. And I think that would be the fastest way to make sure your message gets to them. So I know we've had questions about that in the past. So just go to our usd373.org and there's a board page, and then in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see it. So if you do want to get a hold of them, that's the best way to do it. Mr. Van Rankin, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I'm not sure if we've touched base on this in the past or not, but we're doing some on-site PCR testing for staff, and also some, that's for asymptomatic or symptomatic, assessments. And we're also doing some antigen testing too, some rapid testing, and we're starting to roll that out a little bit. I know Nurse Lehman, Karen Lehman, up at the mainly at the high school, is the one that's really coordinating all of that. But that's going to help us as we navigate through this COVID pandemic. We're kind of excited about some of that. Once again, the testing and tracing, if you've followed this pandemic a lot, that's the way we stay ahead of this, and we keep transmission off of our campuses. So we're kind of excited about some of that stuff, and we'll see how that helps us control.
Okay, and we did have one question pop up. Someone wanted to know if there was an update on Summit at Chisholm and what the plans were, what's happening there.
You should be receiving some information about some grade adjustments when we were looking at some grades at the end of the term this past Friday, actually, up and through right now. There's just some, the way the platform is set up, it really doesn't correspond with semesters or terms like we're used to. And so there's going to be some adjustments there. The grade, there was some grade distribution information that was in board packets yesterday. If you want to take a look at some of that, I feel better about the direction that's going. We still have a lot to do from a communication perspective with parents, getting them to understand how the platform works, and also ensuring it's the best thing to do for our kids and families. So there's a lot of things that are going to take place between now and the end of the school year in that particular platform. So so that grade, those from both Santa Fe and Chisholm, those breakdowns are in the board packet of information. They've got to focus on project completion and mentoring and some other things from a data perspective that the administrators and those teacher teams are having more intentional conversations about on a regular basis. So we hope that we see some changes, continue to see some changes, because the data from an incomplete perspective at Chisholm was much better than it was in that first term.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have. As always, if you have any additional questions, feel free to email us at info@usd373.org. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Van Rankin, and thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your week.